one of the bits of dialogue and discourse we've been having so far this season, there's been some ugly football. That Monday night game, that was really the prevailing thought that I think a lot of people had watching that game is, man, this is gross. Like, what is happening right now with all of these games? So I want to dig in on a wider level and try to figure out why that might be happening. Points are down, scoring is down. 1.89 points per drive this season. It was 2.04 last year. And even last year was a step down offensively from what we'd seen over the last 3-4 seasons. So why is that happening? Why is offense depressed? And why does football seem uglier in 2022? What is your first hypothesis here?
Well, I also want to say that sometimes in, a good horror movie, I know you're not a horror guy, but sometimes in the grotesqueness, there's beauty. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. This NFL season's like the Pan's Labyrinth of NFL seasons. It's like the monsters are actually beautiful and everything. But I really, my first prevailing thought is that the Shanahan housing bubble burst a little bit. And this is the defense is striking back in a sense that protection wise, and I think that Broncos and Chargers game was a great snapshot of it because one, everybody's paying attention as they are in national TV games, but also those overhead spider cam views were also showing kind of what's going on with some of these protections. And I think what's going on is a lot of the offenses, and especially in the Shanahan offense, I'm not saying Shanahan's offense is like this is bad or anything. This is just the way they do it, is they have hots built into their passing game. And I think it's because why they have the hots built in is they say, we don't have to adjust anything. We are going to set and forget our protection. When you do a 6-man protection, the 3-man side slide, the center, a guard, and a tackle is always typically away from the running back side. The Shanahan offenses feature a lot of motion, so they don't want to lose the rhythm of their offense by setting it, stopping, resetting it, and they just like having a flow with their offense. And they say they're going to have an advantage by the formation, by the motion, and we'll figure it out. And if not, we have a hot throw, and you can get rid of the ball and find a guy. But what's happening is defenses have figured this out, and they are fine with making you throw hot. And this is just the passing game. All that motion and shifting, the center points and goes, we are good. Throwing hot is replacing the blitz. If I have two guys, the Mike and the Sam are coming off the strong side, I'm hitting the slant or the crosser or that voided part of the coverage. Now these guys are blitzing, but there's no voided part of the coverage. So I am hot. Our protection's busted, but now I'm throwing right into a guy getting tackled for a 3-4 yard gain.
Or you're too scared to even throw it because you see that color and you're just going to eat it.
It's covered. And so this is just, it's taken away one of the answers that offenses have had for years and years and years. The defense just caught up to the rules that they have.
So the third down pass protection stuff is kind of where I would start with it as well. I asked a bunch of coaches this week. I was like, what do you guys think the answer is? And I got a bunch of different answers. And awesome. It's a fascinating conversation. So the third down stuff is where I would start. If you think back to when offense was kind of at its height over the last 5 years, that 2018 19 stretch when Mahomes won the MVP and all of that, offenses were rolling. Okay. In 2018 on third down, teams were averaging 0.13 EPA per dropback on third down. This year it's 0.02.
That's ridiculous.
It's a monumental shift. I mean, it's such a huge difference. So I think the biggest difference on third down right now is that we have a group of defensive coaches that has become very, very, very good at just snapping offensive protection rules.
Yep.
There are a couple teams I would go to here, and a couple teams that do it very differently, but I think really kind of give you an example of why this is happening. The Cowboys have one of the lowest blitz rates in the NFL.
Yep.
Blitzing on 19.7% of opponent dropbacks. But the way they rush the passer is incredibly difficult to deal with. On top of having some monsters doing it,
yep.
The way they're lining up and how they're creating matchups and how you don't know which four are coming, that's screwing with protection rules, even if you're not blitzing.
Yeah.
Even teams that aren't necessarily doing that in the matchup game and they line up in more traditional format fronts, there's a lot of overload fronts. Think about what we talked about with the Jets game last week, how they were in those overload fronts consistently, tons of stunts in games, playing with offensive line continuity, all of that. And then you have a team like the Broncos who's blitzing a ton in a million different ways. So I think the amount of defensive coordinators who are consciously looking at how to break protection rules on third down, and offenses and centers and quarterbacks that aren't equipped to deal with those protection rules, in part because so much of the league is inflexible because it comes from that one tree. That's a huge part of this.
Yes.
The extension of it is that, again, it kind of goes back to the Shanahan offense taking over and that becoming so prevalent, so many teams running it. More teams than ever, I think, have become very, very good at having a good early down plan for those sorts of offenses and offenses in general. In 2018, 4 teams averaged 6 or fewer players in the box on half of early downs. 4. This year, it's 9. It's twice as many. And rushing efficiency hasn't increased because I think teams have gotten really good at understanding how to defend the run with light boxes. We've had years to figure this out. Some of it is stunting with a 4-man front. Talked to a head coach who's a play caller this week. He said that more teams are stunting the run than ever before, and it makes it really hard to deal with, even if you're dealing with 4-man fronts.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that teams are doing, the Broncos, again, are a very good example of this. The amount of like penny fronts that we're seeing. So a 5-man front with 1 linebacker where you can play too high in the back end with your nickel defensive back personnel, but still have 5-man surfaces that are difficult to block. We're seeing more and more of that. And I think that the fact that we have more light boxes on early downs, but fewer, but not as increased rushing efficiency is huge. And if you look at like play action rates and play action efficiency on first down, that has decreased over the last few years. Because think about it. If you're in a too high shell on first down, this is like at the core of how you're attacking these Shanahan McVay teams. If you're in a too high shell on first down and you rotate that defense into cover 3 or wherever you rotate it to, while the quarterback has his back turned while he's executing a play action fake, that's the nature of fucking with those offenses.
Yep.
And that's the type of defenses you're seeing now.